Alright, well, I guess I'll go ahead and get started then if that's okay. I'm just gonna check a few options. Alrighty. Just gonna check to see if I actually am on master difficulty. Okay. Alrighty, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Counting down in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, hello everybody. I am Nightbarrel, and this is Moto, originally released for the PlayStation 1. I will be running a full season on Master difficulty, as you can guess is the hardest difficulty in the game. I normally don't do this often, so we'll see how this goes in a marathon type setting here. Just to go over a few basics here. You get 4 turbos per lap as indicated by the green lights that you see on the bottom left hand corner of the speedometer. And then you have your grapple reserve, which is the pink bar below that. The grapple, as you can see right there, allows you to grapple onto these pink poles, which allows you to make these turns a little bit faster and more easier. There are times where you won't see me use these poles. They're usually for the better, especially during one of the tracks that we'll do later on. But one of the major sticks here in Joyride is the waves. Learning how to ride the waves effectively really helps out a lot, in addition to where you place your turbos here. What I usually do is, when I approach a set of waves, I usually take it at a neutral stance and then just push down on the bike. Pushing down on the bike not only allows you to get your bike down to the ground quicker, but also it can also help maintain your speed as well. Alright, and ooh, that was a bit of a bump there. And all these waves are on a global timer, so if you know where you are at a particular time, then you know what kind of waves are coming towards you. Actually, they're not coming towards you, they're actually going away from you, which is why some of these waves actually just like all of a sudden appear right from underneath you and just like lift you up unexpectedly. Now, just to discuss on the platform that I'm playing on, I am actually playing. This is actually a PlayStation Network download on the PlayStation 3, and unfortunately, it is no longer available for download at the moment. I think the only Jet Moto game that is available for download is Jet Moto 2. Jet Moto 3 was available for some time, but I was unlucky enough to miss that. But I've never owned the physical copy of Jet Moto 1, only Jet Moto 2 and 3. I've owned the PC version, which I haven't seen anybody get that to work properly. It's just so crazy. It's much faster, but there's a lot of problems with it if you're trying to run it on a modern computer. Alright, so these little highway bits, you gotta be careful as to not over jump these, otherwise you might bonk yourself onto one of the edges right here. Just gotta be careful on those. Yeah, just finishing up here. Looks like a 306. That's not bad at all. Okay, so up next is Cliff Diver. Cliff Diver could be a real hassle to newer players, especially because of the switchbacks. Not only the turns are like really sharp, and learning how to grapple on them is kind of difficult, but I think you can hear the Twitch alerts. I don't know if I thought I turned them off. If you can confirm that with me. Or actually any sound bites. If not, I may have to turn them off real quick after this one. But anyway, not to derive from the commentary here. Yeah, the switchbacks can be really difficult for newer players because they are actually uneven, and trying to control your bike while using the grapple and turning across this terrain it takes a little practice. But what I usually it just takes a little bit of sharp turning and then just a tad of grapple. Don't need too much of it. You don't want to overextend your grapple at all. And then just go across this little shortcut right here. And what I'm doing in this part right here is what's known as hill grabbing or zigzagging. I usually go between those two terminologies right there. What I basically do is use the side of the bike to grab onto the hill and keep myself on the ground as I go over the hill. That way I don't lose too much speed. In fact, I might gain a little speed if the hill is big enough. But also I can still keep my momentum going, because going in the air, especially with the smaller jumps, it just feels like forever when you're up there. And going off this cliff dive here, I turbo off of the cliff and try to hope to get inside far enough to where I could just turbo off in a straight line, but normally there's a rock in the way that I have to adjust myself for. But overall, 217 is actually pretty good, so I'm really happy about that. So Hammerhead introduces the suicide track portion of the game. Now, suicide tracks are where you race from point A to point B, and then 180 back to point A onto point C, and so on. And with this, you actually run into everybody on the way back. So not only does this make this exciting, but it also makes it a bit more challenging and sometimes frustrating depending on how you adjust for these tracks. Hammerhead is not too bad because everybody just takes the highway portion of the track while I just go down here in the water bit. As you can see there. It gets more dangerous in Master difficulty though, because you end up running into the AI a lot more often because they're quick enough to get to the water bit after the highway bridge. Oh, God, bonked my head right there. Sometimes bonking your head can lose you speed. Thankfully it did not. But with the heavier bikes, you don't lose speed at all, which is a nice thing to have when you're running ILs on this, because you could just tank through this place with no problem at all. Okay, so up next is Cypress Run. On Master difficulty, this is really difficult to get first place in because you have to get past all the AI. And the AI in this game is relentless, especially on Master difficulty. But as long as we can get past everybody, should be no problem. But these guys are not allowing me to do so. So we may have to fight them in this part right here. But if I'm quick enough, then I should be able to separate from them and not have to worry about them for the rest of the race. Because if you crash or like slow down significantly, it's really difficult to try and come back to the head of the pack. Especially this part coming up here, which is the Serpentine Cut. And this is where this is the only I think this is like the only track where I don't use the grapple pulse here. Usually I do is just brake and then sharp turn, because this is just like much more quick than trying to risk grappling and sharp turning, because if you're not too careful, then you're going to run into the wall and then you're going to lose control of your bike and more than likely crash. But now that we got some good separation from the II, we should be good. And there are times, especially on this track, where I would constantly make tiny adjustments because, you know, you're trying to avoid all the trees and such, that you would just lose speed for no reason sometimes. Luckily I didn't lose speed there, but when you make these tiny adjustments, you would go from 120 to all of a sudden you're at 110. And then, I don't know, just for seemingly no reason. I haven't yet figured out why that happens, but it happens. As you can see there, I like sharp turn ahead of time before braking into the turn. That seems like the best method for me, at least. And that part right there, that used to scare me a lot. You just need to learn the route through these obstacles, because the swamp stages are not that bad at all. You just need to feel your way through these. And that log jump, that was a good log jump right there. Again, it seems like half the time that it would just lift me up high in the air, even though when I'm trying to put my nose down to try and not get as much air. But again, I have yet to figure out why. It's just so weird. And this is one of the big things in Jet Moto, is learning how to control your bike across all these different terrain. And constant use of the shoulder buttons really help out a lot. Because the front shoulder buttons are your sharp turns and your back shoulder buttons are your rolls. So if you're going up, I guess like a really wide turn with a deep slope, rolling to the outside of the turn really helps out a lot. And a good example of that is going to be on this next track, which is Blackwater Falls. During my normal full run playthroughs, getting past the AI is actually kind of difficult because it's such a narrow track with 19 other racers here. But here in Master, a good chunk of that field goes out ahead of you. And you just need to get past the few that are behind. And then we could just overtake them later on. Right here, and here comes a little shortcut right here. The famous plantation house, which is unfortunately boarded up in Jet Moto 2, so can't be able to access that anymore. Now we used our first 2 turbos right there to get past everybody. Our 3rd turbo here after the dam, after we lost like a significant bunch of speed. And then the 4th turbo, I decided to use it here. It allows us to gain some momentum heading into the 2nd lap. And plus, it seems like it seems better than using the turbo like right here. But there's like so many twists and turns through this river that I don't know. It didn't feel like a good enough risk for that. Alright, and I guess I should go into my choice as to why I chose Wild Ride. Now, Wild Ride and Gunner both have the best bikes in the game. Stats-wise, you would look at it and say that Technician and the Max have better stats because they have a higher acceleration. They have a lower lift, which seems pretty good considering that, you know, getting up in the air is not so good. But Wild Ride and Gunner seems like they have a much higher top speed. Well, not by much, but they still have a higher top speed. And the big thing, and this is why I chose them in the first place, is because when you turn normally, shouldn't have turned in that much. When you turn normally, with Technician and the max, you actually lose a good chunk of speed if you do it too much. Here with Wild Ride and Gunner, I can turn as much as I want, and they would lose like little to no speed at all. It's just because of the lower handling stat is what makes this possible. And I don't know if they have a slightly higher weight than Technician or the Max, but overall, they seem like the better bikes by a long shot. Okay, so our second suicide track is Suicide Swamp. This is actually the most dangerous of the three, even though this is a green circle track. It's just a small track with 19 other racers, so it's kind of hard to try and avoid them at all times, because they will mess you up if you even so slightly bump up against them. And plus you have all these trees and stumps in your way as well. I'm gonna try to sneak in past them. So, this is actually a pretty good run so far. Okay. And there's another reason why I run it on amateur difficulty, which is actually the easiest difficulty in the game, is because the AI appear at... well, you can expect the AI to appear at certain points on the track, especially on suicide tracks. So you know exactly where they're coming from and where you need to be at that time. That and getting past everybody more easily, it's also a good reason. Oop. Yeah, and getting pushed back on your bike is actually a lot worse than crashing, because not only do you basically come to a stop, but you actually have to cover more distance as well. And the spawning system for Moto, oh, I shouldn't have gone that way. The spawning system is actually, it's a weird system. When you crash, you actually spawn on the exact point where your bike is currently at. So if you decide to crash headfirst into a tree and your bike is still behind the tree, they will spawn you right behind that tree, and then there's a good chance that you will run into that same tree and crash there as well, because the nose of the bike is actually really sensitive. And it's silly, but you know, it's a system that they were working on overall, and it gets a lot better in Jet Moto 2. But on to willpower. We're currently at the point where it's the don't touch me stage, because if they knock you up, then they will more than likely throw you off the track and you have to go back to the last checkpoint. Because if you fall off the track, as opposed to crashing, you will actually go back to the last checkpoint, whether it be like close by or like really far away. And when it's really far away, it's a huge time waster. But again, with willpower, it's a very long track. It's actually the longest track in, like, at least in the first two games. I don't know how long the tracks are in Jet Moto 3. But it takes a good chunk of time to complete. But it's actually one of my favorites, because there is so much to do. And there is a copious amount of hill grabbing, which I will go into more detail once I get to it. But for now, using these, going through these switchbacks, just get close to the grapple post and you'll turn in quickly. And then for this part, there's actually, the track is actually layered weirdly in that it can slow you down significantly, and there are at times where it can completely stop you and make you crash. It's very weird how that's set up, especially with this turn as well. You can see well, yeah, I just like ran into the wall. But you can see the bike start like stuttering a bit, like you saw right there. I don't know what exactly causes that, but it can slow you down a lot. So the hill grabbing, as you can see right here, what I do here is I use the roll to get the bike onto its side. And then I also use the sharp turn so that the nose will actually stay down inside of the turn. So that, because if you do just the roll, there is a chance that you will still get lifted up into the air after the top of the hill. But if you keep your nose down, then you'll be able to keep that momentum as you go over the hill. So that's something that I've learned how to do during my IL runs, and just by doing this hill grab, it saved like a lot of seconds, especially on this track. Like less than a year ago, we were struggling to like get 430 times on this track. Now I get like constant like 420s with no problem, barring any crashes and such. Just, oh, I didn't hard brake enough. Yeah, you have to like hard brake enough to not get clotheslined by that checkpoint, or at least not run into it. Oh. Okay, it's okay that you can cut the turn right there. You can obviously the invisible... let me try that again. You can obviously see the invisible wall that was on that jump. If you hit it, then it'll automatically count as a fall, and you'll have to go back to the last checkpoint. So that's it's not necessarily a big risk, but it's one that I don't take all that often for reasons unknown. Ooh, almost fall though. And just brake right here. You have to be careful not to... oh, I guess the elbow touched the wall there. That tends to happen. Whenever any part of the body seems to touch the wall, especially like some invisible walls that you see past the initial wall, they just like fall down and cry a lot. But anyway, Ice Crusher. This is personally one of the major run killers during my full season playthroughs. This track has basically no walls to protect you if the AI decides to bump up against you and throw you off the track. So you have to be like really careful, especially at the beginning when you're trying to get past everybody. They're gonna swing over to the left and they just straight up crash me. Okay, and it just spawned me right in between the icebergs, which is fun. Which is funny because there is actually a little thing where you can fall in between the crevice of in between these icebergs, and then you could just straight up fall for like a minute straight. What it is that if you get the bike stuck in between the icebergs, then the nose of the bike will actually touch the iceberg part, and since the nose is actually really sensitive, your rider will automatically fall off, and then it'll spawn you like right in between the crevices, because technically the bike hasn't fallen off the track yet. So it'll just spawn you there over and over and over again until your bike finally falls off the track and you just lost like a bunch of time. Which is kind of weird. I discovered that accidentally one time. And turbo right before this tunnel here. course, you got to keep your nose down to avoid that checkpoint, not to get clotheslined by it. Although it is Jet Moto tradition that you will get clotheslined by a checkpoint sometime. It is hilarious. Alright. I guess I should go into detail about some of the other categories here. There is something called stunt mode in this game. Technically, stunt mode is not a cheat. You can actually use it to gain progress in the game. What it is that when you do a flip, like what I'm doing right here. That little ooh, that's my favorite sound bit in the game. Yeah, but when you do tricks like that, you get a score depending on how far you've turned your bike, essentially. And depending on the score, you get either one turbo, a full refill of turbos, or the quote-unquote bike enhancements, which, especially to this day, I have no idea what exactly it does. It can, I think it gives you like higher acceleration or higher top speed or like less resistance or whatnot. We don't really exactly know, but we tend not to try and get too much of a score to get the bike enhancements because, you know, basically does nothing really. But in any case, stunt mode in general is just a much more different discipline than running this on regular turbos. It requires a lot of planning, and sometimes stunt mode times on certain tracks, oh, I forgot the turbo there, they actually aren't that much faster than the regular normal mode times. Especially, there's this one track, Suicide Swamp, where the IL record for a normal mode run is a 1:22.7. I have yet to been able to at least duplicate that in a stunt mode time because there really isn't much opportunity to stunt without losing too much speed. So you get like one extra turbo when you do it normally. So even with that, I'm still like struggling to still struggling to at least match that 1:22.7. Alright, so Snowblind. I have to get into this real quick. There are going to be these hills, and I have to slow down enough in order to not crash on top of the tunnel. Right here. I have to... the technique to that is to just let go of the accelerator just long enough to where you're down to like 80, so that you can just barely sneak in underneath the roof of that tunnel. Alright, and getting past these guys, if they bump into you while you're making the jump, it actually makes you come to a complete stop, and then you just fall off the track. And I've had that happen to me like several times during warm-ups, where it seems like I was in the clear, but then I just like run into somebody and just fall, and that just brings you down, literally and figuratively. But in any case, do a little hill grab right here. Whoop! Almost didn't do it properly. And then just another hill grab right here. Normally I go from right to left on this turn, but the AI loves to go from left to right, and therefore comes a little risk in running into them. Yeah, these suicide tracks though, they're pretty fun. Although in Jet Moto 2, which I am also going to do later on in this marathon, the suicide tracks are a lot more dangerous, and you'll see why then. Because the tracks are like just much more narrower, even though there are fewer riders on the track. And they just always seem to like pinpoint to your location and just run into you. Trying to turbo off of that hill, just like at the right part of the hill to where I don't get like too much air, so that I land on just like right before the top of the hill, so that I don't have to lose too much speed there. There we go. That was pretty decent. Alright, here comes everybody. I got to actually get to the outside so I don't actually risk running into them. Because they usually go into the inside and like in the middle. But there is always that one stray that wants to go to the outside. And I have to look out for that as well. Oh, okay. If I like even touch that wall, it'll automatically count. It'll automatically count as a crash. Not a fall, but just like a regular crash. And same for this jump right here. If I go too far to the left, then it will count as a fall, and then I have to go all the way back to the checkpoint, which wastes like 10 seconds or so. But overall, this has been a pretty decent snowblind. Could have been a sub 4 if I hadn't like stupidly crashed at one time. But we are already at the final track here, Nightmare. And Nightmare is like really difficult on master difficulty because it's so difficult to come back if you've like fallen off the track. And you can fall off the track really easily if the AI lets you. So I have to be like really careful, try not to touch them. I did touch them, but thankfully they could come out of nowhere and just ruin your day. Okay. Oh, this is bad. I have to get up there. Alright. Thankfully no one like ground pounded me off the track. Have to get past the max right here. There we go. Okay. We're good as long as we don't mess up at all. And this is another track where the hill grab really shines in here. Especially the swag zag, which is in the early part of the track. I'll go ahead and show it again. But the only part of the track which I'm still having a bit of trouble is this part right here. I haven't really found a way to, you know, not get any air off of that turn. That just seems like the faster way for now. But using the first two turbos here just to get past these platforms really quickly. And then a little swag zag all the way down the hill. Gain so much speed off of that. And the soundtrack for this game is really good. But I think Jet Moto 2's is like really bad. It's a little bit better. Although I really love the Ice Crushers song. It's so good. And Jet Moto 2's soundtrack, which again I'm going to play later on, it's just so suitable for each of the tracks. Like, I can't really describe how good it is. Okay. I was hoping that it would catch the wall, but sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Thankfully, we don't have to like fall forever to respawn, because you will, especially during the platform parts. They just love to show you the city below as you fall for like 5 seconds and then respawn. And all these extreme twists and turns. We really find out ways to get through these really quickly. And the track design in this game... Oh, okay. That just, like, stopped me there. The track design in this game is, like, really good. And it gets even better with Jet Moto 2. Jet Moto is kind of like the experimental game. Where, okay, we have hover bikes. We can go over any surface. You know, we try starting with islands and then swamps and then over snow and then across floating metal platforms in the sky. Oh, that's time, by the way. I forgot to mention that. But, yeah, that was Jet Moto. A really fun game. It's just... I never get tired of playing it. And, let me show you, once we beat Master Difficulty, the championship screen. This is what you get when you beat Master Season. And then afterwards, you get, like, a code. Specific to each team. Each team has 2 codes, and then there's like one final code at the end. But anyway, that is it for Jet Moto. Thank you everybody for stopping by. And you know, again, I'll be playing Jet Moto 2 in about 24 hours ish. Yeah, same channel. So thanks everybody. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys later on.